Hey, so in this video, I'm going to show you how you can build a CI/CD pipeline in Azure Devops and Orchestra. So first thing you have to do is make sure that Orchestra is hooked up to Azure Devops. We can see that I've actually got my account level Azure Devops set up already. And what this allows us to do is store pipelines via the Azure DevOps API and store them as code in your DevOps organization. Now, when we change stuff in the Orchestra UI, we'll do so from our own profile. So that means we also have to connect via, our own profile, so that when we do things like push changes, you can say it's been done by Hugo. So it's pretty simple. I'm logged in already, so that's all I need to do. Now, the next thing you're going to need to do is to make sure that your pipelines are actually set up to work for CI/CD. And what that typically means is starting with environments. So we'll all have a version of production where our production data lives. But something you're probably also going to want to have is staging. Staging should be a replica of production, generally speaking. It might not be, but it's an area where you can run your transformations, your ingestions, like any data operations, but doing so before you actually touch what's in your production data environment. What we recommend people to do is to set up different integrations. A clear example would be like a database integration. So, you'll have your prod data in your prod databases, and this would be something like proddb. You'd then have to have another connection for like a staging DB. And then all you do is create a variable that is pointing at the production connection, and then the same variable in a different environment that's pointing at the staging connection. So here you can see in my staging environment, I've got Snowflake connection pointing at this UAT connection instead. Cool. Let's go and find the pipeline we want to play with. All right. So in this case, I just have like a really simple pipeline. It's just running a Python script. And the cool thing about parameterizing your packages like this is that you basically get to leverage a single pipeline for all of your environments. So by parameterizing the pipeline, which I've just done, you'll see that instead of explicitly mentioning the connection, we are, basically calling a dynamic environment variable that's going to get parameterized at runtime. So you don't have to have multiple instances, right? You don't have to have, multiple examples of multiple bits of infrastructure. You can just have one. Now we've got protection laws set up on this, so it's not gonna work. I've already got dev Hugo 2, so let's go ahead and check that out. Then we can go and change the connection here as well. Change it to Python Azure, because I've got many Python credentials. Cool. And now what you'll see is that when you trigger this pipeline, you can trigger it in different environments. So that's what we're going to do with the CI/CD action, but we're going to do it via API. We're not going to do it in the portal. So the next thing we want to do, and you can probably guess because you can see this little hint here, is we're going to want to make sure we pull the right version of the code when we do our CI/CD action. That means pulling it from a specific branch, which means the branch will need to be parameterized. So in this case, I've got this inputs branch syntax, and that's because I've set an input up here. So the default is going to be the main branch because that's what it's called in Azure DevOps. But if you call it something like master, it may also be master. It doesn't have to be main. And that means that when we run this, we're all automatically going to pull the main branch. But if we set this input, we're going to set the name of the branch that we want to pull. And you can very easily access the syntax by grabbing this environment variable syntax here. Well, input syntax, not environment variables. Okay, cool. So these are the changes. Let's have a look at what the CI/CD action looks like. All right, so we can see I've updated Dev Hugo, and we're going to create a pull request for that. Cool. And we can see now we have this sort of check happening. And that is because we have an Orchestra pipeline, which is what I'm going to run you through now. So this is our main pipeline. What you have to do is you have to go here and then you have to click edit to edit the pipeline. But then you also have to go to triggers in order to work out when to trigger this. What we're doing here is we're actually triggering this depending on a few sort of different definitions. But the high level is whenever there's a pull request into main, we're going to trigger this in a staging environment. But then whenever there is a merge to main, we're going to trigger this in a production environment. And if you need to learn more about continuous integration triggers, you can find the documentation in Azure. The more interesting thing here is actually taking a look at the action itself. And that's what I'm going to do now. So in terms of those triggers, these are defined up here. And then essentially what we're going to do, just before we dive into the code, is we're going to grab the configuration, so the name of the environment, like staging, and the name of the branch. We're then going to trigger the Orchestra pipeline via API. And then the Orchestra pipeline is going to return to us a pipeline run ID. And then with that run ID, we're going to poll the Orchestra API to see what the status is of that run. And if the run fails, we fail the action. So here we have the conditions. And because we haven't wrapped the action yet, so in GitHub, this is like 5 lines of code, but we don't have a wrapped action in the Azure Devops Git marketplace. We only have one in GitHub for now, which means that all of this stuff has to be done manually. However, the good thing is I've given this to you, and I actually did this myself because I used AI, and it was actually really easy. So yeah, high level, just running a bash action. And here you can see where we're setting those inputs. So we're setting a variable called target env. And in that case, it's going to be staging. That has to be the same name as the environment in Orchestra. We're then going to run the main branch. That should actually be parameterized. It's not. We're then going to run the task IDs. So the task IDs is the ID of the task you want to run. We're going to say continue downstream run, which means if the job succeeds, we're also going to run downstream tasks. And then you can see we've also added in some run inputs. So adding in the environment name. I've got a little bit of error handling here as well. So making sure that if we don't get a 200 error code, status code, we throw an error. And then a few other little bits of validation here. We're then going to set this run status value to running, and then while true, just keep polling. Then when it comes to production, basically doing exactly the same thing. It's just the parameters are slightly different. So, let's say you also wanted to pass in a specific production environment variable, you could do that too. But apart from that, all of this logic is basically exactly the same. So yeah, we can see this has been successful, which is pretty cool. And we can see we've got some logging here. So now I'm going to go ahead and merge this. I'm going to merge this PR because things are looking good. And I'm going to delete Dev Hugo. Now that's merged, we'll see you've got another one going. So I'm going to head back to Orchestra, and then I'll show you what this looks like over there. Cool. So I'm in Orchestra, and you can see we've actually got an auto sync with DevOps, and it's telling us that our pipeline's been updated. So I'll go ahead and update it, and as expected, dev Hugo doesn't work because we just deleted that branch. However, if I go back to main and have a look, we'll see we've got our Python connection here. So we can see that main has been merged. But after you merge something, you might want to run that script anyway, right? Let's say you're doing a change that changes the name of a column or the schema of some table. Like, you're going to want to update everything after you've made that change. You're not just going to like leave prod in its current state with the column with its old value and then do a change with the column in its new value. So what we've done is we have triggered a run of this as a result of the CI/CD run we just did. And here again, we can see we've got our webhook trigger. We can see it's pulled from the main branch, and we can see that's fired from the production environment. So this is actually triggered. This is a CI/CD run. You can see everything that's been parameterized over here. And that's really it. I think the nice thing about this is once you have CI/CD set up, like you can really trigger anything. But with a single config file, there's no infrastructure to maintain. You can run these pipelines with these different configurations in a fully serverless way, without having to set up any additional infrastructure. But yeah, that's how we set up a run in Azure Devops. It is on our roadmap to wrap that action into something nicer. But for now, we have provided a sort of template for you to do it with. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this video, and any thoughts, comments, let us know in the comments.